I just had a phenomenal experience that I'm going to share, and I want to just say up front, I'm sharing it mostly for myself because I want to document what I just experienced before I forget it. But I figured some other people might find it interesting as well. So particularly people, our friends in the God Squad here. So we'll start here, and then we'll see what happens. But yeah, I want to get this down while it's fresh in my mind, before I forget what I just experienced. So I think this story starts with what I mentioned the other day, Dr. Barbara O'Neill. And my friend, this is a guy that I've known since high school. And he told me that he went to see Dr. Barbara O'Neill in a Mennonite church. And I said, "Who's Dr. Barbara O'Neill?" And he's like, "Oh, you don't know who Dr. Barbara O'Neill is? She's like totally into what we're into." And meanwhile, I had no idea he was into any of this, but he says she's totally into what we're into. She's into like holistic health and, you know, living according to God's will and natural law and all this. Okay, so I start exploring her work, and I think it's like interesting. And then I start thinking like, I'm exploring these different churches, and I'm going to these different churches, and why don't I explore the Mennonite Church? There's a Mennonite church that's by me, and I know there's like Mennonite churches. There's different kinds of Mennonite churches. Well, I don't really know much, but I know that there's ones that are kind of more open, and there's ones that are more. I hate to use the words like liberal and conservative, because there's, I don't mean in a political way. I just mean in a theological way. There's more liberal and more conservative. So I'm like, okay, I think this one's more like an open one. And so I can just go there, and I'll check it out. It's like literally probably like 5 minutes from our house, which we've been driving like hours to visit churches. So this is like one's just really close by. So I go myself, and I pull up, and I'm like, whoa, they're all wearing like the uniforms. Like the women all have those things they wear in their heads that the Amish wear. And the guys are all wearing this like same kind of suit. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a black suit, and they're all wearing the same thing. And the women are all so they're all wearing like these like uniforms. And then I come up, and everybody is really nice to me and like really welcoming, and there's kind of like a light in their eyes, and they're smiling, and they say welcome. And I come in, I go to sit down, and I'm like, oh, there's all women over here, and all the men are on the other side. So I'm like, okay, I got to go on the other side. So I realized pretty quickly that the men are all seated on the right side, the women are all seated on the left side, which interestingly enough is the same as when I went to the Orthodox Church, except they don't sit, they stand. But in this case, they're sitting, nice, pretty comfortable pews. I sit in the back. I'm the only one not wearing the uniform. And the interior has nothing. No pictures, no statues, no cross, no altar. Literally nothing but a clock. And so that was noticeable. That was interesting. And I'm sitting, and I guess you call him the pastor or the minister. He starts us off. He says, we're going to take communion today. I later learned that they only do communion twice a year, and I happen to be the day they do communion. So we're going to take communion today. We're going to start off with some songs, and then we're going to do, sermon, etc. So the music starts, and something about the singing really struck me. Like, I just felt this immense stillness. No instruments, totally a cappella. And they're singing together these songs out of a hymnal book. And I'm just closing my eyes, and I'm like going into this deep place of stillness inside. well, it was really every time they sang. Uh, so so that was powerful. And then there's like a reading and a sermon, very lengthy. Um, Not really my cup of tea, to be honest. Like I'm not into so many words, but I know in these Protestant churches they like to have these long sermons, and I'm sure a lot of people think that's great. Um, and so that was that. And then he did say some things I thought were hit me, actually in a deep way. Hard to explain, but I did get some value out of what he was sharing. And so then a guy comes up and he says, "I'm a visitor here as well. I thought you'd like me to sit next to you." And he said, "Sure." And he said, I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania." And I said, "Oh, I'm from Reading, Pennsylvania, right next door." And so he seemed excited to hear that. And then his father came and sat with me as well. So now I have these two guys. They're wearing the same outfits as everybody else, but they're sitting next to me. The pastor says we're going to do communion now. And he gets something that looked like a little loaf of bread, and was like breaking off little pieces and giving them to each person. I didn't participate in that because you have to be a member of the church to participate in that. And then they had a cup, which he said had juice in it, grape juice, and that went to each person. He'd wipe off the cup and then give it to the next person, until the whole congregation, the community, had the communion. Now, it gets even more interesting because he goes, "Now we're going to do the ordination of washing the feet. And this is a sign of our humility." So he explains what's going to happen. The women basically leave the church and they all go in the back somewhere, and they're doing this ritual. And the men are in the front and they're doing this ritual. And so they're washing each other's feet. I couldn't, where I was sitting with my view, I couldn't totally see what was happening. I can only see like the upper half, but basically they're washing each other's feet, and they would kiss each other on the lips after, and I'm not the cheek, the lips, after the foot washing. So later, afterwards, and then they started singing these beautiful psalms again, all a cappella together, and the whole church is like filled with this music of the voices singing. And then afterwards, the pastor said, what did he call it? The holy kiss or something? Yeah, he said I think he said it was the holy kiss. So then there's some more singing. The service ends, and some of the guys come up and introduce themselves to me and start talking to me. The women, and I'm kind of used to this from traveling the world and being in different cultures and stuff. The women don't really look at you at all if you're a guy. They don't say hello to you. They don't really talk to you. But the guys were coming up and talking to me, and I had some really interesting conversations that I'm still reflecting on. Now, one thing I didn't mention that's probably the most important thing is the women are on the left, the men are on the right. The boys are sitting with the men, and the girls are sitting with the women. So, except there was one case that was different where there was a daughter with the father. I don't know why that was, but besides that, it was all boys on the right, daughters on the left. And the level of stillness in these kids was what struck me more than anything else. Like, they were just so still inside. And this service was over 2 hours, and they just sat there. And every once in a while, there was a kid that needed to leave or something was going on. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, there was a level of quietness and stillness in these kids that was striking compared to the greater one. And I've seen this with Amish kids as well. What they can just sit almost like in a meditative state, right? So I mentioned it to the guys, and we had this conversation, and I started asking them about. We talk about a lot of things, but I started asking them about the church and the culture of the church, and they were saying, yeah, we don't use any internet, we don't use any TV, we don't use any smartphones. We're allowed to have cell phones, but it's only to make phone calls, no texting, and it's mostly just for like work stuff. And we talked about vaccines, we talked about like diet, we talked about a lot of stuff. And anyway, the I think where it comes back to me is something's building in me that I've just been feeling for a while, which is I really don't think that this technology is good for us. I think it has a lot of negative repercussions. I think, the ADHD that's happening in kids and all the other behavioral issues that are happening in kids and adults, and adults as well. It just seems like the social media, the TikTok, all of this stuff is not bringing us closer with God. It's making it more and more difficult for us to get close to God. And it seems like they have it right. They're on the right track, and they have a sense of real cohesive community together. And, the Amish take it to another level. But the Amish, I don't know if you can access I don't think their churches are open to the public, but this group is open to me. They told me, come back as much as you want, and, really, really welcoming to me and kind towards me. And there was kind of like a light in their eyes, like the sense of being in the world, but not of it, that I'm still sitting with and I'm still integrating. Powerful experience. This community is just like 5 minutes from where we live. And maybe things don't need to go to the level that they're taking it, but definitely feels clear to me that they have something. They have something. And there's a recognition of a way to be in this world that so much the mainstream American culture and Western culture has lost. And I think it's affecting people's brains, it's affecting people's hearts. It's creating it was even interesting being in conversation with them. There would be these long periods of silence that for the average person I interact with is very uncomfortable. For me, it's fine. But for most people, in fact, the only other people I'd say that I recall having, well, there's a couple groups, but more like indigenous people, they'll have long periods of silence when you're communicating with them, and it's comfortable for them, right? And it was the same with these Mennonites. It was like you didn't have to have it. Like if you're not constantly talking or constantly having a bunch of thoughts, then they're bored. No, the silence was totally. Silence was that was like a very comfortable place for them and for me. So there was a resonance there. But man, it's interesting to be talking with people these are people that literally have never used the internet. I mentioned TikTok and they're like, we don't really know what that is. Literally, they didn't know what it was. But it's like the frequency of their brains is different. Like they haven't been harmed, and I do think there's something harmful about all of this TV and internet and TikTok and social media and Facebook, and so it creates like a conundrum for me. Obviously, I'm using the internet right now to communicate with all of you, and I love all of you, and I want to keep communicating with you. But I've been having this feeling for a long time that this is not the correct way to live, and that it's very recent. It's only in the past like 15 years, maybe 20 years now. Yeah, maybe 20 years now that we've had all this social media and all this stuff, the smartphone. Um, Smartphone's probably even less. So it's got me contemplating some things some things coming to the surface that God's been basically telling me for a while. And I can see a movement of people that want to live in community in a low-tech way and a more sacred way. So, okay, I think that's enough for now. But again, thanks for indulging if you listen this far. This is something that I want to listen back to and just remember all the things that I experienced. I've been visiting kind of like an anthropological experiment. Been visiting a lot of different churches. This was probably this and the Orthodox and the Latin Mass, Catholic Latin Mass. But this one I think probably was the most interesting in certain ways. Okay, love you all. Wishing you a beautiful Sunday, and let's keep it going.